Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro, a slice of news, culture, and conversation. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, Robin, the Metro turns 1 year old.
Ow! So we're celebrating some of our work over the last year, stories that made us think, listen, and laugh.
We learn how to waste less and what it means to be more thoughtful about our imprint on the environment.
And we get some tips on how to find community and connection during Michigan's long winters.
Plus, Robin, President Trump's first days in office have been a whirlwind. We talk with a legal scholar to unpack how he's used his executive powers. But first, we all know how the country talks about Detroit. Crime has plagued our city and overshadowed much of the good happening here, but some recent numbers signal a shift. Crime data from Detroit for 2024 showed the lowest number of homicides since 1965. It's the second consecutive year homicides have dropped in Detroit. Meanwhile, violent crime dropped by 7% overall, and property crime dropped by 3% compared to the previous year.
That's right, Tia. And city officials credit a relatively new community violence intervention program. In 2023, the city partnered with 6 community groups to reduce gun violence. Each group is responsible for a 3 to 5 square mile zone in the city. And with the city's blessing and COVID relief dollars to fund it, the organizations got to work. Since the program began, the city has reported lower crime numbers in those targeted areas. Zoe Kennedy is the executive director of Force Detroit. That's one of the partnering organizations doing this work. Tia and I sat down with him in January to reflect on this moment for Detroit and for him. Tia began the conversation.
Our organization was started 10 years ago by our founder, Alea Harvey Quinn. She's a woman who is the child of 2 Black Panthers, and her father was incarcerated for 27 years, and she experienced something as a child of a man and a woman that experienced cycles of violence in the community. And we are in the 48228 Franklin Park and Warrendale community, also known in the philanthropic space as the Cody Ruich area.
Yes, indeedy. That is that's where I grew up. So I always love when we have you guys on the show because of the things that I've been able to see within that community, especially over the last 10 years, like you say, the growth, the development that's coming in small businesses and just the people in the community thriving there. So it's due to the work that Force Detroit's been doing, the Cody Rouge community group there as well. Yes. So, props to you all who have been on the grounds. But you all develop relationships with the community, which allows you to work closely with the residents and allows you all to have these relationships. Can you talk about developing and nurturing these relationships throughout that area?
Yes. We started out with a strategy of doing participatory research with the community, figuring out what the community needs were. We try to stay focused on the social determinants of health. In that, to address the problem, we had to deal with the population that was closest to the problem, or the population that they said was the problem. Even in that, as we go forward, we don't get here without those individuals who are struggling with this deciding not to engage in perpetuating cycles of violence. Also, I like to say we look to engage, and we are engaging our community beyond just dealing with those individuals who are impacted by violence. The whole community is, even when it comes to the businesses, the homeowners, making sure we practice cooperative economics, making sure our ecosystem, our philanthropic ecosystem, our grassroots ecosystem, that our dollar circulates throughout our ecosystem to have a thriving, sustainable community. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you talked about those dollars, those American Rescue Plan dollars. Well, those American Rescue Plan dollars run out this year. And if there's nothing sustainable there for these organizations who have came into these communities, as other organizations have come in the past, that funding won't be there. So you won't have that same level of engagement. So we have to make sure this year that we're advocating for sustainable resources. It's a bill 4606 that was supposed to be voted in the legislation that will fund our work in perpetuity. That means it will fund our work as long as Michigan is a state, and we will be able to operate and function like other departments and agencies in public safety.
And that's the perfect segue, because my next question and my next add-on was going to be about, number one, you guys have to have something that's going to maintain you economically after funds run out. This is something that you guys are going to have to worry about. But as well, worrying about the connection with the Detroit Police Department and connecting with them and fostering that relationship as well, especially as you go on and you want to expand your presence within the city of Detroit, making it a more permanent presence within the city of Detroit. Can you talk about fostering that relationship with the Detroit Police Department?
Yes. One, we have to maintain a healthy balance. It has to be proximity is a thing. So our work, we can allow the relationship with that department to compromise our work, and we can allow our relationship with community to compromise their work. So it's a balance of respect. We respect DPD. DPD actually allows us or supports our strategies. So they're not going to get involved or interrupt in our methods, and they also offer support. They're part of our methods at times. If we're doing a block party or something, we will call for that deterrence. Like, man, we need a squad car out here just to deter any type of conflict. Even though we have our relationships, you can never be too safe. And oftentimes, we're not the only ones in the community. So our elders, they trust DPD, and we want to foster that trust because when it comes to constitutional law enforcement, I think our city does an outstanding job at it. Chief Bettison, or interim Chief Bettison, is known in the community, like the grassroots community. He's a community chief. It's not like it is in other cities. So when it comes to the population we serve, they understand that when we are around law enforcement, we are at the table because we have legitimate power in being community leaders.
Mm-hmm. And before, we transition here a little bit, but I do want to build on this, that having that voice, having that seat at the table, and the importance of bringing the community's voice to these tables. And then the importance, like you said, of balancing that all out, because you have some folks who are very much in support of the Detroit Police Department. You have some folks who are just staunchly against the Detroit Police Department. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance all of those feelings and emotions out when you're trying to take this information to the seats of these tables?
When you're operating in integrity, you have to be unapologetic about that, right? I'm a man who, in my younger years, was involved and engaged in violence, and I understand what type of impact it has on community, and I understand my lens isn't the only lens. I'm not the only community member or community leader. So some people may have a different stance and a different approach. Our thing is to educate community on its multiple approaches towards responding and addressing what they're seeing in community. And you have to respect that as long as it's not harming community. I can't go argue with someone about how they respond and expect someone to embrace or acknowledge how I respond to it or address it. So my thing is, one, operating integrity, right? We're not going to compromise our credibility. We're not about to tell on nobody. We're not trying to solve nothing. We are there to encourage you to do better with your life, discourage you from harming another community member, and to offer or give you access, further access, greater access to resources that could add to your quality of life. So it's about standing in integrity and being unapologetically committed to community, not committed to nobody's agenda, not committed to no one's trauma, not committed to anyone's perspective of how they feel. No, we want what's best for a community, and we understand our role in community. We are that space, that alternative. We are the ones that you could say, man, I can trust them. I could talk. They're not going to do this. Police are held to a certain standard. When they see certain stuff, they held to a certain standard. And you need someone that's held to a strict code, right? I'm not pulling anybody over.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not about to do that. So you need people to do that, but you need people who will just spend all day with someone, building that relationship, to have influence, to intervene in conflicts. Yeah.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Robin Vincent alongside Tia Graham. We're speaking with Zoe Kennedy about his organization, Force Detroit, which works to keep Detroit communities safe. We're talking especially after Detroit police announced a historic drop in homicides. Now, Zoe, you mentioned being engaged in violence when you were younger. You were incarcerated for 14 years for
Yes.
committing crimes. Now you're doing this vital work. What took you on that path, and how did you change course?
What took a lot of people in our community on that path, when you study your history, and I have, like I said, I'm unapologetic in it, it was stuff put into our community, and our community leaders were killed in the past. The drug epidemic put me on that path. My father being addicted to drugs, being an academic scholar, working for Atlas Oil, but he partied, and cocaine was socially acceptable, so was crack. Crack ravaged our community. I began to sell drugs at 11 because I wanted money. My mother was a single mother because our fathers were addicted to drugs, and she was taking care of 4 children, doing the best she could. And you know, once a young man reaches 11, 12, they want finer things. They begin to look at others and compare themselves to others once they're in school. Insecurities kick in, and if you haven't had the development for emotional intelligence, a lot of in our schools, we need that. Like, you got physical education, but you don't have emotional education, K through 12, and we are bombarded and overwhelmed with trauma and obstacles living in these communities. So the crack era created this behavior. Media created this behavior of, ultimately, a young man wants to exercise masculinity. If we have visual depictions of aggression as masculinity, this is all we know. And what led me out of that path was those resources were provided once I was in prison. I get cognitive behavioral therapy once I'm in prison to get out. I run into male mentors who will spend all day with me because we're in a cell in prison. And I'm the type of individual, if I believe something, I'm going to stand on it. So knowing the truth about my history, knowing the truth, and understanding psychology, sociology, and philosophy allows me to be able to think outside the box. I love it. I could not behave the same once I knew the truth because my core principles changed.
And now you're trying to bring those resources to young men so that they don't have to be in prison to access them.
Yes.
Can you talk about teaching young men to develop that kind of emotional intelligence?
Yes. So in my trainings and some of the techniques that I use, I know visuals are a thing. We know humans respond to this. I operate using Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. It worked when we was living life of crime. You give them shoes, you give them some food, some money. You meet those needs and you gain influence, and a person actualizes. And sometimes when you're on negative, they self-actualize into a gangster, or they self-actualize into someone, a convict that lock us up.
That's the highest point on Maslow's hierarchy,
Yes,
is
and you meet those needs.
self-actualization.
Exactly. Like, you meeting those needs of safety. I may give you a firearm to keep well, you can do the same thing in a positive way. You meet those needs of safety. I'm going to put you in a safe environment, or I'm going to make this environment safe. I live in the community that I service. I live right down the street from the house that my grandmother purchased when she moved in the community. So you engage the young men and young women and expose them to a different perspective of life, because it's going on and it's there. We're going to expose you to entrepreneurship. We're going to expose you to some religion if you want to. We're going to expose you to politics, because our people, and what I mean by our people, I mean impoverished in our communities. Our people have to be in every space so that we are represented in every space. We are not, what I'm teaching my community or sharing my community, we are not here to be divided based on what we've been indoctrinated with or what we've embraced, ideology. We are here to have an agenda based on the best interests of all of us. Because something we can all agree to, we want to live and be safe.
My last question for you, Zoe. You are the newly appointed executive director of Force Detroit. Mm-hmm. You're going to be leading this organization, and I'm wondering how it felt for you in this new role, and given all the work you've been doing to learn the news about this historic drop in homicide rates in Detroit.
Yes. So, being totally honest, before I came here, the reason why I wear my glasses a lot, but the reason why I have my glasses on, I called our founder, Leah Harvey Quinn. I became extremely emotional this morning. And I told her, no one believed in me like you. She built an organization to fund the field and fund the work. And she got me 3 weeks out of prison, educated me, built me up, and left me an organization she founded and built. I was a volunteer. So these numbers have done to me personally, they have edified me. She has edified me. This is what happens when people in the community see magic over monsters. Where else would I be able to be me? Zoe. I don't have to say I'm Mr. Kennedy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And be in spaces and recognized and acknowledged. And that's what I want for the rest of my brothers and sisters. I'm not the thing or the person or the only person that should be focused on. She is not the only person that should be doing this. We as a community need to lift our people up. And I'm going to end with this. Malcolm, Martin, Elijah, all these leaders, they have passed on. But the characteristics and the traits never leave human beings. So you have to remember, you must do greatness and even greater. You cannot look at them and feel like it stops with them. So that's what that's how I feel. I feel like I pick up the torch when it comes to that spirit and having the best interest of my people and representing my people. And what I mean by the ones who have been impoverished, who this plight and this illness have been put on. I have to represent that. That's where I come from. I come from communities like that. So it's an honor, but at the same time, it's my destiny and it's what I was born to do. And it took people who were born to see those things in people like me. So it's beautiful. And I don't look at myself. I look at the community around me that lifted me up.
Zoe Kennedy is the executive director of Force Detroit, one of 6 organizations that works with the city to reduce crime and keep neighborhoods safe. We were talking about the historic drop in homicide rates and violent crime in Detroit. Zoe, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. And Robin, we're celebrating 1 year.
Happy birthday, T.
Happy birthday.
Up next, President Trump's first days in office have been a whirlwind. We spoke with a legal scholar to unpack how he's been using his executive powers. This is the Metro on WDET. Stay with us.